It was a love affair born in the bayou.
She was a stunning young woman. She came from a very loving family. She had a beautiful smile that just took you in.
He took one look at her and fell head over heels.
Together, their lives seemed unstoppable. Until a daylight abduction hit them like a hurricane.
There's a woman missing. Her family wants to know where she is, and we have got to close in this circle. So when you hear the word kidnapping, everybody's immediately on guard.
But as a stunned community holds its breath, a family springs into action.
The family pulled out all the stops, four-wheelers, social media, whatever they could use to search for their loved one, they did.
As they're speeding on the ATVs toward the home, they hear this screaming.
I'm hearing a holler, help, you're killing me, you're killing me.
That's when the first shot was fired.
There are some times where everything just immediately gets cranked up to 10, and that was this case.
Everything happened so fast, nobody knew what was going on inside that house.
Shock and confusion definitely was the main thing in that moment.
November 6, 2013. It's a warm, humid afternoon in the capital of Cajun country, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yeah, Cajun Creole kind of style, we're good for the food, hospitality, and just always having a great time, very friendly.
Down on Madeline Street, Lafayette resident Demetria Robinson is heading home after her shift.
It was a normal November day. I had just gotten off of work.
Demetria crosses the street to her house, and shortly after she gets home, she hears a commotion outside of the community daycare facility across the street.
I was standing outside, and I just hear noise, and I just seen this car, and this woman, she was blowing her horn. And I was like, what's going on?
All of a sudden, you see two adults fighting. There's a woman literally trying to fight for her life, pleading for help. Pleading for anyone to help her and her child.
Leave her alone! He's on top of her, and the baby is under her.
Mind your business.
And her eyes just looking at me saying help. But in that same instant, you look at the baby, he's crying, looking at me. It was just a crazy situation.
In that split second, Demetria makes a fateful decision.
I said a little prayer to myself. I said, God, just help me to get the baby. If you want me to get the baby, just help me. In some kind of way, I was just able to reach and just get the baby. And I made sure the baby was okay. And I took him into safety.
The man took the woman and drove off, holding onto the steering wheel and her by the back of her head. So a lot of questions are running through people's mind, but through it all, they are in shock and they are confused.
Within minutes, Lafayette dispatchers are flooded with 911 calls.
There's a man beating a woman over here.
Police race to the scene of the attack and are immediately thrust into an unbelievable manhunt where every last second counts and where one young mother's life hangs in the balance between life and death.
In southern Louisiana, no one will ever forget the name Bethany Arsenault.
Born in 1983, Bethany Arsenault was raised in Duson, Louisiana, a small farming community on the outskirts of Lafayette.
It's country. It's very country, and everybody's related. Everybody's related in the area. Everybody knows everybody.
The Arsenault clan was no different, and Bethany grew up surrounded by a large extended family.
She had this big, tight-knit family. There were always lots of cousins and friends around, cookouts, family dinners, and they genuinely loved and supported one another.
By the time Bethany entered high school, she had grown into a beautiful young woman with electric eyes and a magnetic personality.
Bethany was really a strikingly beautiful young lady. She was 5'8", had these glowing eyes, and just exuded an alluring, attractive energy.
She was smart, sweet, drop-dead gorgeous, and of course, more than one young man found her irresistible.
Like a lot of young women her age, after high school, Bethany dated a few guys, but true love remained elusive.
During her early 20s, she worked and had a couple of boyfriends, but for whatever reason, those relationships didn't work out.
She came from a great family. She wanted a family of her own someday, but of course, it's not always easy to find Mr. Right, especially in a small town.
But then in 2010, at the age of 26,
Hey, Bethany.
Bethany ran into an old family friend,
My friend Scott, right?
Yes.
Scott Thomas.
Scott and Bethany had met a few years earlier. He was friends with her cousin Marcus, and her brother Victor knew him.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Long time no see.
Like Bethany, he was 26, hardworking, and came from a good family in nearby Leonville, Louisiana. Scott was charming, funny, and sweet. And best of all, he was single like her.
So when you gonna hang out?
We're hanging out right now.
I'm talking one-on-one time. Soon? I hope it's sooner than later.
Given Scott's history with her family, there was a real comfort level between them. Bethany felt like she could trust him, that he was a good guy, and when they went out together, they just clicked.
Their connection was just electric and immediate, and Scott just couldn't spend enough time with Bethany.
He was a guy in love.
They were both young, good-looking, and fun. They spent a lot of time together.
Within a few months, Scott and Bethany moved into a home together in Leonville, Louisiana, about 30 miles from Bethany's family.
This is what Scott wanted. He wanted them to live together. He wanted them to build a family together.
A wish that came true in 2011 when their son Jackson was born.
Scott and Bethany had a beautiful little boy. And like any couple with a new baby, at that time, they were very, very happy together.
But as much as Scott and Bethany adored their son, life under the same roof wasn't always perfect.
Scott loved Bethany very much, but he could be a little emotionally up and down, a little suffocating, and on top of all that, Bethany was used to being closer to her family and was feeling a little disconnected.
Ultimately, in June of 2013, they both decided it would be best if they went their separate ways. Scott stayed in Leonville, and Bethany went back to Doosan to be closer to her family.
They shared custody. Bethany had primary custody, but Scott was definitely in the picture.
Bethany was working with him. You know, he was seeing his son. She just didn't want it to be involved with him on an intimate level.
Honestly, it seemed like they were back to being good friends, family friends, who just so happened to have a beautiful young son together.
But just when it seemed like Bethany and Scott were back on even keel, a shocking chain of events ripped their lives apart. It begins that fateful November day in 2013.
Here is this beautiful young mother attacked and abducted in broad daylight.
It was just a crazy situation.
A situation that would leave a community holding its breath and wondering what kind of monster might be lurking in their midst.
This was the third abduction in a year in the community, and there was a real fear that the same person was responsible.
After a mutual breakup with her boyfriend, Scott Thomas, newly single mother Bethany Arsenault was ready and willing to take on the world.
She was a beautiful 29-year-old woman. She had an adorable son, and she had her whole life in front of her.
But just as life was looking up, an unspeakable horror rips Bethany's life apart.
On November 6, 2013, Bethany was violently abducted outside a daycare center in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Everybody was really shocked and believe that's happening.
There was a lot of confusion as to just what was going on. Whether it was a kidnapping, a carjacking. All that was known was that a male had a female and took off with her. And there was a child involved, and the child had been rescued.
As responding officers try to ascertain the situation, eyewitnesses describe a chaotic and violent scene.
What did you see step by step?
I saw her get out the car with her son, and then he started pushing her into his car.
They said that there was an African-American male between 5'10", 6 feet tall, He grabbed the woman, threw her in the vehicle. It was a white Buick LeSabre.
It happened like so fast. I don't even remember seeing his face. The only thing that really sticks in my head is that girl eyes.
The police put out a statewide APB on the vehicle, but they only had a vague description of this man, and they had no idea what his motivations were.
And as for the car at the scene, police trace it back to Bethany Arsenault.
People don't know if these two know each other. Is this just a random guy? Is he someone who escaped from prison? Or is he a rapist?
So many things could have been going through their heads. You never know what could happen to that woman, to Bethany.
But as questions about Bethany's abduction begin to swirl, investigators are forced to face a sad new fact about life in Lafayette.
Lafayette is a pretty safe town. Like everywhere, it's got its good areas and its bad areas. But in the last few years, there have been some very upsetting crimes involving young women.
Mickey Shunick, a young woman riding her bicycle one night, she was forced into the vehicle. But that was one of the biggest cases here. Unfortunately, she was found in a shallow grave out in the middle of nowhere.
The Mickey Shunick case was a case that resonated with a lot of people. So when you hear the word kidnapping, everybody's immediately on guard. And they're thinking, what's the information that we need to know? What do we need to be on the lookout for?
But Mickey Shunick wasn't the only young woman to vanish from the area. 16-year-old Keosha Felix also went missing in April of 2012. And Keosha's case has even more parallels with Bethany's.
Like Bethany, Keosha was from Tucson, Louisiana.
She was also mother of a 1-year-old. She vanished into thin air. The majority believe that she was either kidnapped or held against her will.
The answer as to where is Keosha Felix is something that the community as a whole is still asking.
Consequently, authorities fear Bethany's abduction may not be an isolated incident.
This could be part of a pattern. It could be the work of a serial kidnapper, or even worse, a serial killer.
So in this instance, police have information about other missing persons cases in the area. They have details about these cases that the family members don't have that may be relevant to this case. And they have to seriously consider, are these crimes related?
I think that's when everybody was alarmed that it really was a scary situation.
As the search for Bethany intensifies, news of her abduction rolls across the local airwaves.
Our thought was, here's a missing person, here's a family that needs help. Let's get them the help they need.
It just made you wonder what was going on. And after I found out there was a little boy involved, it was just the sense of having a little boy of my own. What's gonna happen to him now? Is his mom gonna be found? What's gonna happen? And then that's when it takes on a different aspect.
As fear spreads through the community, detectives reach out to the Arsenault family to inform them that Bethany has been abducted.
Their loved one was missing and they had no earthly idea where she was.
When you have a very close member of your family that's in that type of imminent danger, you want to do what you have to do to find her.
They were going to do everything in their power to find her, one way or the other.
In a community where blood is thicker than water, there's hope that Bethany's family will be able to find her. But with a trio of young women now missing, would their efforts be too little, too late?
I just thought in my mind that she was dead.
We have a code as journalists to try to remain unbiased and try to remove yourself from the story. But when you cover stuff like this and for such an extended amount of time, you do become invested. You do start to know some of the people. And so when you hear kidnapping, you immediately jump into the mode of, we need to find out what's going on, because we live next to these people. We know these people. We're related to some of these people. We call these people our friends.
29-year-old Louisiana mom Bethany Arsenault hasn't been seen in the past couple of hours since an unknown assailant forced her into his car outside a daycare in Lafayette, Louisiana. And with 2 other local women missing and presumed dead, everyone in this quiet town is beginning to fear the worst.
Everyone's extremely worried about Bethany. This is a very public kidnapping, a very violent event, and no one knows where Bethany is, who did it, or even if she's still alive.
If it is a kidnapping, there are two people involved. There's the kidnapper and then there's the victim. The sooner you can find out what's going on, the sooner you can close in that circle.
With the clock ticking, Bethany's family hits the streets in search of their missing loved one.
She came from a large, loving family. I mean, you know, the number of people out there searching for her, you know, not giving up hope. They knew that also she was a fighter and wouldn't give up.
Hello?
Hi. This is my cousin Bethany. She's been missing since yesterday. Have you seen her?
No, I haven't. I know y'all from around here, though. Such a good family. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Thanks.
It was a large-scale effort. You did have Lafayette Police, and you also had the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office searching for her. And then the family was really doing a full-scale search. The family is doing everything that they can. You know, we've had it in the paper. It's been on television. The police have put out alerts. So it's a community effort.
While Bethany's family goes door to door, investigators are still looking into the possibility that her case could be connected to the disappearances of Mickey Shunick and Kiosha Felix.
Like Bethany, these were two attractive women who just up and disappeared. So is it possible that the same person could be responsible for all three crimes?
But when investigators search for similarities between Bethany's disappearance and that of Mickey Shunick, they quickly hit a dead end.
Right away, they can eliminate any connection between Bethany's case and that of 21-year-old Mickey Shunick because a registered sex offender had been arrested and charged with Mickey's death. And at the time of Bethany's disappearance, he was behind bars.
However, Kiosha Felix's case isn't so cut and dry.
The answer as to where is Kiosha Felix is something that we and the journalistic community and the community as a whole is still asking.
She just disappeared into thin air.
Law enforcement probably wouldn't want to call it a cold case because I'm sure they're doing everything that they can, but the dozens of times that I checked up with law enforcement about it, there have been no leads.
While it's possible the individual who kidnapped Kiosha also abducted Bethany, there are some glaring differences between the perp's MO in each case.
Kiosha basically vanished into thin air. No one had seen her alleged kidnapping. It was the opposite of Bethany's abduction.
This was brazen in every sense of the word, not only because of the time of day, but with certain kidnappings, things are planned out. There is thought that has gone into it. This just seemed like either someone had snapped or someone had had enough.
But just who in Lafayette would want to abduct and perhaps kill Bethany Arsenault?
People don't know if these two know each other. Are they friends? Are they lovers? Is this just a random guy and they're trying to figure out what to do?
Before investigators have time to zero in on a suspect, officers stumble upon a huge discovery.
That looks like that white car they were looking for earlier.
On the night of November 6th, just 9 miles from the scene of Bethany's kidnapping, police found an abandoned white Buick LeSabre behind an oil production facility in Tucson. It was a rural area surrounded by woods and sugarcane fields.
They immediately search the area and find a woman's shirt on the ground and find additional clothing and blood in the vehicle.
I've got a footprint.
When authorities arrived, they saw 2 sets of footprints heading into the fields.
Somebody's barefoot and they're heading into the sugarcane.
But tracking the prints at night through towering sugarcane fields is no easy task.
That area, you're looking sugarcane, probably 5.5, 6 foot tall. I mean, growing up as kids, we used to go play in it, treated it like a maze. It's very easy to run inside sugarcane and get lost.
Coupled with the challenges of the landscape, a recent rain had just fallen in the area.
They were not able to find any leads, and it probably had something to do with the weather conditions.
Because some spots were still wet. Those fields hold water. But as far as to find footprints inside there, it's pretty rare.
Even though the footprints don't pan out, officers have better luck with the abandoned vehicle.
When police ran the plates on the Buick, they found that it belonged to Bethany's ex-boyfriend, Scott Thomas.
But could the doting father of Bethany's young son truly be behind her shocking abduction? If so, just what had pushed him over the brink? As investigators press for answers, an unexpected call is about to reignite a family's fading hope.
The family and authorities and volunteers are out searching tirelessly for Bethany. Then all of a sudden, the sister gets a phone call, and it's Bethany.
Police in Lafayette, Louisiana have just made a disturbing discovery in the search for beautiful mother Bethany Arsenault, who has been missing for 3 hours.
Law enforcement found Bethany's ex-boyfriend Scott Thomas's car abandoned in a rural part of Doosan, Louisiana. The vehicle had women's clothing and blood in it.
When the authorities did find the car, they did see some footprints. They kind of followed where that went. However, the footsteps did not lead them in any path to locate Bethany or Scott or have any clues as to where they ended up.
While authorities intensify their manhunt, investigators try to determine what may have sparked this violent abduction. As detectives speak to Bethany's family, they uncover a troubling truth.
Bethany was in a relationship with Scott, and it was a violent relationship.
To friends, co-workers, and the larger Lafayette community, this revelation comes as a shock.
From the outside looking in, they looked like friends, ex-boyfriend and girlfriend, but friends who cared about the well-being of the child they had together.
Bethany's cousin Marcus tells detectives he was afraid for her safety.
Marcus says that he actually moved in with Bethany because she had received threats from Thomas in the past. So obviously there was some tension there.
Like his mood swings would be like quick, fast, in a hurry.
It seems like he wasn't a bad guy. I don't think that anyone thought that he would take it to the extremes that he did.
Bethany's brother Victor also describes Scott's jealous tendencies to detectives.
Like, that's just how he was. Like, he was so, like, he was just insecure, I guess. Like, you know, like, it's just crazy.
Just calm down.
You think I'm stupid?
God, what are you talking about?
As soon as I leave, you can go to somebody else.
That doesn't even make sense, Scott. You know what? I can't even talk about this.
Nah, you ain't going nowhere.
Scott!
He's becoming more possessive. He was monitoring her every move, and when she wasn't there or where she would normally be, he would be there. He's definitely out to cause her harm.
Said you ain't going nowhere. You hear me?
He was very abusive and, struck her, threatened to kill her and her child, drug her by her hair. He was, known to have a pattern of violence.
And how long did this go on?
For more than 2 years, family members say Bethany kept the abuse a secret. But eventually, they began to suspect something was very wrong.
She wouldn't go out, ever. She wouldn't do things she used to do. But I started catching on to it after I started hearing a little bit of things,
There's a lot of shame and embarrassment for victims of domestic violence. A lot of times the victim of the abuse is being told that it's their fault they're being abused, and they start to believe it. It's a very shameful feeling for them, and it's not uncommon for them to keep it from their loved ones.
There was a lot of abuse, and she would leave, come back, leave and come back. And she finally had enough in June, and she reported him to authorities because he threatened to kill her.
Fearing for her safety and that of their young child, Bethany moved out of the Leonville house and filed a restraining order against Scott.
She told me, I'm really scared because he really is crazy.
Bethany moved in with her mother, but she had to return to Scott's house to retrieve some things. When she did, Scott made a scene. Law enforcement was called and Scott was arrested.
He was like, Bethany, I'm gonna get you here. I'm gonna get you here.
After his arrest, Scott was apologetic, and he made it clear to Bethany that he intended to change his life for the better, and he hoped that Bethany would allow him back in her life.
We know that she was in a relationship that had involved domestic violence. She made a report to authorities. However, the person that she made the report against was the father of her child. She would leave, come back, leave and come back, and she finally had enough.
According to Bethany's brother, Victor, that was a bitter pill for Scott to swallow.
He wouldn't tell me exactly, you know, I'm a kill myself, but he would always like, you know, I can't live like this. He just had in his mind, like if he couldn't be with Bethany, nobody could be with Bethany.
For detectives, it's now clear Scott Thomas is their man. But if Bethany is Scott's captive, they know there may not be much time to save her.
No one even knows that Bethany is still alive. This guy sounds suicidal, and it's quite possible he's planning to kill Bethany and himself.
Several hours into the search, when it seems the stakes couldn't get any higher, Bethany's sister receives an unexpected call.
Hello? Oh my God, Bethany.
Listen, I need you to take care of my son. Please tell me that you'll take care of my son.
What? Where are you? Where are you?
Just promise me.
Bethany, where are you? Bethany.
While it's reassuring to know Bethany is still alive, the sense of relief is fleeting.
The sister doesn't know where her sister's calling from, what's going on, but those words, take care of my son, kind of implies like, hey, this is it. It's your responsibility because I'm not going to be here anymore.
But as one family's worst nightmare continues to unfold, another equally shocking development takes the case in an even more unbelievable direction.
One of the younger cousins went to see the psychic.
She said, don't go too far. Bethany is still in the area.
For nearly 24 hours, Bethany Arsenault has been missing in southern Louisiana. A surprise phone call has just revealed that Bethany is still alive, but for how long, no one knows.
Bethany was with Scott, and it was a violent relationship. He threatened to kill her, and based on his actions, he definitely intended to do so.
Desperate to find Bethany before it's too late, her family and friends step up their already intensive search.
They rallied together, and maybe 100 of them were out there searching, you know, on foot, on four-wheelers, combing almost the entire city, almost the entire Lafayette Parish.
The tension was very thick. They were just so upset by her disappearance.
By the morning of November 8th, exhausted friends, family, and authorities are beginning to wonder if Scott Thomas hasn't already fled Lafayette Parish, having either dragged Bethany with him or left her for dead in the Louisiana bayou.
Authorities, once they found the footsteps, they used multiple things. They used drones, used cadaver dogs, and they were not able to find any lead.
But just as their hopes are fading, Bethany's family receives a tip from a most unusual source.
One of the younger cousins went to see the psychic, and the reading said that she was in the general area where the car was.
The woman told them to look by a body of water.
Heeding the psychic's advice, Bethany's family, including Victor and Marcus Arsenault, hightail it back towards the location where Scott's car was found 2 days before. There, they encounter a local resident named Kenneth Alleman.
Howdy. What can I do for you, sir?
Hey, we're looking for my niece, and we spoke to a psychic, and she said that she was not too far from where her car is, just like right up the way. Said something else about a body of water.
They said one of her family members, he believes in psychics real good, and she told him that she was still alive and she was near a body of water. And when he said body of water, the first thing that came into my mind, they have a pond which was about maybe 400 yards from there, which we called Anderson Pond. So we figured that would be the next place that we needed to go.
It's a little ways that way. I can show you if you'd like.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Right, well, let's go.
But on their way to the pond, the men run into a local farmer.
Where y'all headed? Anderson Pond. We're looking for that missing girl.
Ow! You guys checked all around these abandoned houses and everything?
They said, yes, we searched all the abandoned houses on this road, but we didn't find nothing. And that's when he pointed to the house in the middle of the field and asked them if they had searched there. And they said, no. They said, we didn't even know there was a house there.
At first glance, you'd never think that there was a home there. It looks like bunch of trees, bushes, overgrown grass.
I guess we'll check that first.
It was kind of a weird feeling, almost like something you only see in the movies. We got there and everybody just kind of stopped and looked at each other and like, what are we supposed to do now? What happens now?
Hey, check out the back.
He was going towards the back of the house, and then that's when she started screaming.
Hang up right here, okay?
Hearing Bethany's cries for help, her cousin Marcus takes action.
Marcus breaks it open, and at that point he could hear Bethany scream.
Bethany! Bethany, is he on? Where are you? Bethany!
He had a knife to her throat and he started, stabbing her, in essence, in the throat and in the head.
Scott, stop! Scott, stop!
And at that point he opened fire.
Marcus!
When she started screaming, everything happened so fast, and everything, the gunfire and everything, everybody scattering at the same time, everybody hollering for the police. None of us knew what was going on. Nobody knew what was going on inside that house.
Acquaintance kidnapping, where the victim knows their kidnapper, has the largest percentage of female victims. Kidnapping is more often associated with other crimes and has the highest percentage of injured victims. In the morning hours of November 8th, 2013, the search for 29-year-old single mother Bethany Arsenault has come to a head as a hail of gunfire erupts from inside an abandoned farmhouse just outside her hometown of Duson, Louisiana.
When we heard the shots, we didn't know where the shooting was coming from. We just know that one of the guys ran towards the back of the house. So we didn't know if there was gunfire between the two or if it was just one single gun. We didn't know what was going on.
Though it seems like an eternity, seconds after the shooting stops, a figure emerges from the home.
I noticed her cousin come around the corner with her, and everybody just, once we saw that, we just all kind of took a deep breath in. It was bloody. I mean, she had blood coming from her head and her neck and everything. We saw the knife wounds to her neck. We saw the knife wounds in her head. And we knew she needed to get to the hospital quick.
But as serious as Bethany's wounds appear, when first responders arrive, they quickly ascertain that her injuries are not life-threatening, and fortunately, she's going to survive.
Everyone is clapping, they're cheering, they're hugging each other. So it was a moment of triumph.
With Bethany now en route to a hospital, a team of officers cautiously enters the abandoned farmhouse.
Clear right.
Officers don't know if Scott Thomas is truly dead or if he's still alive, armed, and dangerous.
Moments later, they find his lifeless body in a bedroom.
Body left. Tango 7, starting major crimes and a detective, please.
The scene is nothing short of pure carnage.
There's blood everywhere. There are bullet casings everywhere. It looks like the shootout at the OK Corral.
No pulse.
Bethany's cousin, Marcus Arsenault, had in fact shot Scott Thomas 11 times.
When Marcus eventually sits down with detectives, he describes why Scott had left him little choice.
They kicked down the door, went into the bedroom, and there Scott was on top of Bethany, stabbing her.
They tussling, which somehow, she's like, he's stabbing me, Mark, he killing me, help, he stabbed me in my head, he stabbed me.
When the first shot hit him, he kept stabbing her.
I shot him in the leg, I shot, and I hit him in the ribs. I hit him in the ribs, that's when he dropped the knife.
He had to strike him 11 times before Bethany was able to free herself from his grip. That's how strong and possessive he was. He was being shot numerous times, but he was intent on causing her physical harm and killing her.
But just how lucky Bethany is to be alive doesn't become clear until 11 days later when she's able to speak with detectives. According to Bethany, It all began on the afternoon of November 6, 2013.
So although she had a restraining order against him, she did have shared custody. This was a prearranged meeting, and as they would do whenever it was her time to pick up her son, they would meet in a neutral location.
Apparently, as this exchange is occurring, he made some sort of advance towards Bethany.
He was trying to talk to me and trying to hug me, and I was like, no, Scott, I'm leaving.
He just went crazy.
And I know how Scott do, and he was mad or whatever. So I seen him in my rear view. He was speeding, like following me, chasing me. So I went to the closest place I knew, and that was daycare.
So Scott chases Bethany to the daycare. He's yelling, he's screaming, and he throws Bethany in the car just after a Good Samaritan is able to grab her son and takes off.
Scott was able to snatch Bethany and throw her into his vehicle and drive off, holding onto his steering wheel and then grabbing Bethany's hair so she could not break free.
He was just mad. You see what you made me do? You see what you made me do?
Bethany says Scott then marched her through the adjacent sugarcane fields.
They hid out in the ditch while the family, our police officers, roamed right up and down the street, feet away from them. Of course, he threatened to kill her if she was to make a sound.
He basically drug her through the woods that first night of the kidnapping, and then eventually he drug her to this house.
Bethany's time in that home was like a living hell. It was worse than prison. He watched her every move.
There was a lone mattress in the corner of a room, very little sunlight, and I believe a jug of water may have been left behind for some years, I'm sure.
The first night she was forced to sleep on the floor under a dirty carpet while he had a knife to her throat.
I couldn't move, I couldn't do nothing because he was threatening to kill me and he kept saying he had a gun. He had a gun. And when we'd sleep, he would sleep with a knife around my throat.
I know that he kept her for those 2 days without any food or water. Torture.
But Bethany says that even in her weakened state, she continued to fight for her life.
The first day there, she was trying to go into the restroom and she was like, you know what, I'm not gonna let this guy just, hold me here. So she got a curtain rod and tried to hit him upside the head. And, it just bounced off. Her second day, she was using the restroom and she took a piece of wood and tried to break free by knocking out the window, but we caught her.
To make matters worse, Bethany says that with each passing hour, Scott was growing more and more unstable.
He would cry and say, he should have just loved me. Why he just didn't love me? He would get angry. He would get mad. He kept saying he was going to kill me and then he was going to kill himself.
His emotions and mood varied. And even at one point, Bethany said he became paranoid. And she said that she sensed that he kind of regretted that it got that far, but it was too late for him to turn back. Throughout the whole ordeal, he made it known that his main intention was to kill her, but they were going to die together.
Then, on the morning of November 8th, a glimmer of hope appeared.
They woke up, they both heard the ATVs, and he was like, oh, it's your family, they're coming for you. And he put her on the bed and he held a knife to her as the family neared, and then he said, we're about to die.
Bethany knows this might be her last chance to survive this ordeal, and she just starts screaming.
All I felt was him trying to slice my neck. So I kept hollering, help, help. He killing me, help, help.
Moments later, it was all over.
So Marcus kept saying, let her go, Scott, let her go. And he kept trying to slice my neck. And I kept hollering, no, Marcus, help me. He's trying to kill me. He's trying to kill me. Please help me. And Scott didn't say nothing. Lamar fired the gun.
Everything had to have fallen into place for this story to end how it did. The fact that from the moment this happened, the family and the community came together and they fought to get her back. She came out bloodied, she came out scarred, but she came out of it.
Following Bethany's statement, on April 23, 2014, a Louisiana grand jury formally clears her cousin Marcus of any wrongdoing in the shooting death of Scott Thomas.
Everyone thought that Marcus did the right thing. Law enforcement did end up saying that it was a justifiable homicide. And I believe had they not, it would have been public outrage.
And though Bethany and her family are still reeling from the terrible aftermath of her violent abduction, everyone knows the final outcome could have been far, far worse.
It was just courageous and brave effort by the entire family.
I believe that everyone thought that Marcus did the right thing. The fact that she made it out of this and, was saved by her family, reunited with her son, I mean, it's just the ultimate story of survival.
Scott was hoping that he would die with Bethany. Throughout the whole ordeal, he made it known that his main intention was they were going to die together. It definitely was a case of, if I can't have you, no one will.
It wasn't exactly a sigh of relief. They were ecstatic to have Bethany out of harm's way, but they were also apologetic for the Thomas family.
This woman, although what she had to go through was gruesome, got out alive. And that isn't an officer carrying her. And that says a lot. The officers were there, but in that image, that's a community and that's a family literally holding each other up.